It's time to set a path forward. It's time to talk about goals. It's time to talk about where you want to go and how you want to move forward into the new year, into the next chapter of your life, your new career, your new relationship, whatever it might be. But you might be noticing that as you move forward, there are these patterns that tend to pull you back. Patterns that tend to pull you down, ways in which you've self-sabotaged. And you might have asked yourself, why is it that every time I try to move forward in my life in whatever area it is that I'm focusing on, I start to fall short? Well, what if I told you that some of these patterns that might be pulling you back in your life might actually be patterns that have been programmed since your childhood? What if there is a trauma that you might not even remember or consciously know of, or maybe you do know of it, that is stopping you from making progress forward in your life? Well, you've got two options. You can let that be the case and live your life with that trauma, live your life with that disparity, or you can make a decision to confront your past, confront your traumas, and pave a way forward, but you're going to need some help to do that. And today we brought you an expert in this field. His name is Papa Ray Hurst, and I'm going to introduce you to Papa Ray in just a few minutes here. But you know the fee for the show, for the broadcast. The fee is to share this show with one person, only one person, unless you want to share it with a few, because you're the only reason, the main reason that this show has grown the way that it has in the past 8 months. We need your help to share the show. You're part of the team. We couldn't do it without you. But remember, only share the show if you took away a piece of value. Only share the show if you took away one thing that made you think differently, one thing, new thing that you learned, or maybe we even made you smile or feel good to start your day whenever it is you're watching or listening to this broadcast. Share it with one person. So without further ado, let's talk about how you can confront your past, confront your traumas, move forward with grace, move forward with power. And to do that, we're talking to our friend, Papa Ray Hurst. And for those who don't know Papa Ray has been married to the same amazing woman for 36 years. He is an international speaker and coach, a pastor, missionary, business owner, author, artist, and poet. He has started and runs 3 companies and a ministry. He is now building a local and national outreach to raise awareness of absent and abusive fathers. Papa Ray published his first set of books, Daddy, Why Don't You Love Me? A Father's Blessing to Both Son and Daughter, Healing the Wounds of the Absent and Abusive Father. Papa Ray, thanks for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Pleasure's mine. This is my greatest passion, is to just share with people. And I say my number one goal in life is I never want anybody to be the same because they met me. I want them to be better.
That's a worthwhile goal, my friend. Absolutely. We were talking before the show and we got into a really good conversation. So I'm like, we got to save this for the show. But we were talking about the significance of past events and childhood and beliefs that we might not even be consciously aware of that actually drive many of our decisions and behaviors to this day. So my question to you is, what is the significance on our past when it comes to us attempting to make steps forward?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked it that way, because let me just unpack a little bit of how your brain works. And so your brain is constantly doing a research of your whole life, every moment of every day, to determine what's about to happen in the next moment. So as your brain finds the most traumatic and dramatic events that happen in your past, and it calculates, here comes the event. I think this is going to happen because of the event that happened in the past. Now, here's the tricky part. This happens in a nanosecond, literally at the speed of light. So in order to keep you safe, your brain's number one goal is to keep you safe. So it's always researching what happened in my past. What do I think is going to happen in my future? Now, you have 40 thoughts a minute. It's about 70,000 thoughts a day. But so here comes this event. Your brain does the research, finds the most dramatic and traumatic events, and says, wow, I don't think this is going to go well. Now, your brain releases cortisol and adrenaline when things go bad, and it releases serotonin and dopamine when things go good. And there's a host of other chemicals that get involved, but let's just focus on them 4. Now, particularly when something goes sideways or goes wrong, this is really critical to understand. It's called the stress response. So, what is the stress response? It just simply is a fear. It is like, I don't think this is going to go well. Your brain does the research, cortisol and adrenaline gets released. Now, the adrenaline just shuts down your organs, dilates your pupils, and helps you to get into the fight or flight mode. The cortisol is the tricky guy. He's the guy we really need to get a grip on. Cortisol takes your cognitive thinking processing ability and significantly drops it. It can go from about 720 bits of data, your brain's processing 720 bits of data, to as low as 20 bits of data in a nanosecond.
Wow.
So here comes the event. Your brain does a research like, I don't think this is going to work out too well. Shoo, drops your cognitive thinking in a heartbeat. Now, here's the problem. Did you ever see a very, very intelligent person do something really, really stupid?
Absolutely.
It's not because their intellectual intelligence did not change. They are intellectually intelligent just as much as they were before this stupid event. The cortisol took away their cognitive thinking processing ability and took them down to, I am going to fight or flight, whatever I need to do to be safe.
Yeah.
So it's not that they weren't smart. It's just they wanted to be safe. Now, here's the craziest part of this whole thing. It can happen by thought alone. You're not seeing a lion or a bear or somebody coming at you with a club. You're sitting there just thinking about it, and boom, the stress response happens by thought alone. Now, remember, we had them 40 thoughts a minute, 70,000 thoughts a day. Dr. Joe Dispenza said 50% of our thoughts today are the same as yesterday. So we're recycling and rehashing all these struggles that we never stopped and dealt with. So this is really important to lay this foundation to have a solid understanding of what is happening and why it's happening. So I call it the simple step, the hard process. The simple step is we need to stop and think what we're thinking. So I call it the simple 5 steps. Stop. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Is it true? What's the truth? So when you break it down, is then 40 thoughts a minute. So you ever get stuck in the mud or in the snow in your car?
Yeah.
What's the first thing you do?
Well, if you react, you hit the gas, right?
You hit the gas. Like you try that several times. So you got mud and snow flying everywhere. Well, that didn't work going forward. What do? Did you get out and look? No. You put it in reverse and step on the gas. Well, after about 5 minutes of that, it's not working. What do? You get out and you look. It's like, oh my goodness, we're up to the axles by now.
Yeah.
Well, we do that same thing mentally, emotionally. We get stuck or we come up against the wall. I call it hitting the wall. What do we start doing? We hit the wall. We start thinking about what we're thinking about, and we try to think our way out of the problem. But what happens when you start thinking in the same direction you've been thinking? What happens to all that stuff when you don't stop? What am I thinking? Why? Why am I thinking that? Is it true? What's the truth? So here's the key. If you never get to the why, stop. What am I thinking? Why? This is this thing we don't do. We don't stop and say, why am I even thinking that? Where'd that come from? Where is the root of what am I thinking? Again, we're so progressive. We always want to, us, particularly men, we want to conquer things like, let's go out and, kick it or hit it or beat it up or throw it to the side. Guys, men, we and women, we got to stop. What am I thinking? Why? See, if you never get to that why, you're never going to correct this problem. Remember, your brain did a research of what? Your whole life, from conception to this moment. Yes, there is a learning process in the womb where we have seen significant healing. We addressed things that happened while the child was in the womb, and we have seen major transformation.
Oh my
But the
God.
key is if we don't follow the fruit all the way back to the root, we're going to battle with that root coming back to life. I call it the weed whacker approach. So many times we see a dandelion pop up in the yard, we take the weed whacker, shoom, cut it off. A couple of days later, boom, there's a dandelion. Doggone it, hit the weed whacker, cut it off. And that's what we see, these intelligent people that do things that were make us scratch our heads like, what were they thinking?
Yeah.
Because they're not stopping. What am I thinking? Why? Is it true? What's the truth? They never got to that deep root of where did that come from? And this happens, I mean, this is true with traumas. This is true with anything and everything, is we got to get back to that root. I call it a simple step to hard process because it's simple. You trace it back to where did it start. The hard process is going back there. We don't like to go back there. We don't want to deal with that. I spent 60 years, sex, drugs, and rock and roll trying to hide that stuff. I'm just going to be honest with you. I lived a bad life for a long time. I struggled through 2 major depressions. 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago now, I was 5 minutes away from suicide.
Wow.
Up until that point, I spent a huge amount of money on very not good things. I'm just going to say it was just not good things at all. Why? I was trying to hide the pain. I was trying to deal with the pain of not dealing with my junk. So people say,
not to interrupt you, this is so important for anything, whether it's what you just mentioned with depression or with people achieving their resolutions moving forward, or where people say they want to get into shape and they start to do it, but they go back to past programming, or even if someone is just innately angry and they want to change, they want to improve, but they're like, I just don't know like where to begin, how to start. These questions that you ask, which are incredible. And just to make sure I have these questions right, you first stop. You ask, what is this? Why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling this way? Is it true?
Yeah. Let me correct that. Stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking? So you got to be clear in what are you thinking? You have to ask yourself, what am I thinking?
Okay.
The third thing is, why am I thinking that? Stop. What am I thinking? Why? Is it true? What's the truth? Now, there's another step to that. Let me just add that right now. Is take a piece of paper and write down and say, write on there, what am I thinking? And then you write down what you're thinking. Then you ask yourself, why are you thinking that? So you're kind of like playing a third person to yourself. So you're becoming your own counselor. You say, Ray,
when do you ask these questions? At what point do you consciously say, okay, now it's time to ask myself the questions that Ray showed me? When do you ask them?
Whenever you get stuck, whenever you're struggling, and the sooner you do it, the better. Don't get yourself so you spin your wheels so much that you get your car sunk into the axles where you need a tow truck to pull you out. And this is what happens. We go into depression. So I went through 2 major depressions, and just let me share real quickly how I got there.
Please.
And it's not hard to get there. And so if you take a piece of paper and like you have this piece of tablet paper and you lay one paper on top of another paper, it doesn't seem like much. Here's, 20 sheets there, and it's not very thick. But do that every single day for 50 years. You're laying one piece of paper on top of another. That piece of paper represents a thought. So it's actually more than one piece of paper per day. But as I laid every thought on top of another, it became this huge, overwhelming thought process and way of thinking that it was so huge I couldn't see anything else. I'm a devout Christian. I grew up in a Christian home. 7 years ago, I actually believed that God was laughing at me. You can say, oh my goodness, how can you have gone through seeing miraculous signs and wonders and seeing people be healed to believing God was laughing at you. It's really not that hard. It's really not hard at all. It's because one thought got laid on top of another, and I didn't take them captive. And it's just another thought and another thought and another thought. As I never went back to the root, which was my father left when I was 4 years old. And I felt it. I tell people all my life, I'm abandoned. I was rejected. I was abandoned. I was rejected. And that was like my common thing. I would tell people, well, guess how I lived my life? I live my life like I'm abandoned, I'm rejected. Well, that was came to the forefront of my mind. So every pastor, every boss, every leader I ran into ultimately rejected me. Guess why? It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I lived my life like I was going to be abandoned and like I was going to be rejected. And guess what? I set it up. I literally set it up with the pre-programming of my mind because that's what I believed was going to happen. And I lived that way until it actually became a reality. So it's so critical that coming back to writing this down. So I write on the paper and say, Ray, what are you thinking? Then I say, Ray, why are you thinking that? Write it out like that. Ray, why are you thinking that? Well, because my dad left, when I was 4 years old. Well, why are you thinking that? Mm-hmm. And then you just keep saying, why are you thinking that? No matter what your answer is, do that about 5 or 6 times.
What was your answer to that? When you asked, why am I thinking that it's because my father left when I was 4 or 5 years old? Like, why? Yeah. How did your thought process go back to that?
So everyone's going to be different. And I probably didn't come up with that answer the first time. But it came down to that. And so now here's the key is you write down, you say, Ray, why am I thinking that? And whatever the answer is, you say, Ray, why are you thinking that? And then you do that until you come down like, aha. Now here's the key. When you get to that aha moment, if you're not willing to change the meaning to what happened, nothing will change. Remember, your brain's doing a research of your whole life, every moment of every day, to determine what's going to happen in the next moment based 100% on the meaning you gave to your past. Now, when I do my exercise, Ray, why are you thinking that? Why are you thinking that? When I get to my ha-ha moment, if I'm not willing to change the meaning, guess what my brain's going to do next year, next day, next hour? It's going to come back with the same meaning. So what I had to do with my father is we all think that, our parents and everybody should be able to bring us something and give us something. Well, when I came out of my last suicidal depression 7 years ago, Holy Spirit showed me very clearly my father was broken and empty, and he couldn't give me what he didn't have. So now what I do is when I work with a client is I give them a white coffee cup like this, and I have them write every person's name on here on a black marker who hurt them or who wasn't, that did anything that, hurt them in any way. Have them put it in a brown paper bag. We go out on the sidewalk and we break it. Have them come back in and pick up the broken pieces out of the bag. And I have them say, like for me, I would say out loud, my father was broken and empty. He couldn't give me what he didn't have. My brother was broken and empty. He couldn't give me what he didn't have. My uncle was broken and empty. And whoever's name I wrote in that cup is I say out loud, that person was broken and empty. What it does, it dramatically changes the meaning that my brain gave to that. Now I got to be willing to go back and visit that every time a memory comes up dealing with my dad. I got to stop. Ray, what are you thinking? Why? Oh yeah, that's right. It was because my dad left. Yeah, that's right. Dad was broken and empty. So it's rewiring your brain.
Wow.
It's a simple step. It's a hard process, but it sure is a lot easier than continue living the way you're living.
100%. Fascinating structure and process. And is it generally always people that had hurt somebody, or could it be experiences? Is it always from childhood, or could it be during your teenage years, your adult years? Like, what are the most common things that you see when working with people?
Most commonly, we find 95% of the time, I can tie what you're struggling with today back to when you were from conception to 10 years old. 95% of the time, I will find a common root that is back before you were 10 years old, including in the womb. I do this Father's blessing where I start the blessing at conception and I go through first, second, third trimester, birth, infant, toddler, all the way through life. And when I'm in praying a blessing or just sharing that blessing over the first, second, third trimester, I watch for deflections on their face or reactions. And when I see a deflection or reaction, I just re-emphasize that they are loved, accepted, and wanted. We have seen dramatic healing when that person receives the truth that they were wanted, accepted, and loved in the womb. Wow. It's fascinating. And I can share countless stories of the Father's blessing radically transforming people's lives. And what is it doing? Is I'm standing as a dad and I'm just saying to a son and a daughter, as your father, I love you, I bless you. What is it doing? It's literally going back to the root of the very first time that they perceived they weren't loved. Now, with my father leaving my home, I had to change the meaning. My dad never rejected me. He didn't say, oh, there's 4-year-old Ray. Wow, I'm going to leave him because I can't stand him. He never said that. He never felt that. He never thought that. My dad was broken and empty. He didn't reject me. He didn't abandon me. He went out looking for something he didn't have. And I had to be willing to change the meaning that I gave to that so that I could overcome that. So in every scenario, we have to be willing to stop shaming or blaming anybody for any reason. Now, I'm gonna step out here and just be real vulnerable, or I shouldn't say vulnerable, but I'm gonna make it very real. I can only imagine there's some people that are going to be listening that dealt with some very traumatic issues. I'm just going to say it, sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. It's probably the most dramatic thing that could ever happen to somebody. And I cannot imagine the difficulty that is in dealing with that. But I can say with all certainty, if you are willing to change the meaning you give it, we're not saying it's okay. Never. It's never okay to hurt anybody physically, mentally, emotionally, or sexually. It's never okay. My point is, if you're willing to change the meaning that you give to yourself of that event, it will dramatically change how you see yourself.
How do you change the meaning of an event that when you look at it, it's so almost impossible to say there was a silver lining here, or maybe I'm using the wrong language, but how can you find a positive or empowering meaning in an event that truly is dark or evil?
Yeah, so there is no positive spin on it. Is what we have to do is be willing to change how we see ourselves. Because remember, our brain's doing a research of every moment of our life to determine what's going to happen in the next moment based on 100% of our beliefs about the past and who we are, not who the other person is. That other person that hurt you was evil and wicked. We can't change the meaning of that. Their wickedness and their evilness was who they were at that moment. Now, let's be honest, they could have changed by now. We don't know. That's not the point. The point is how do you see you? That other person, again, was broken and empty. They couldn't give you what they didn't have. It wasn't you. The key is Stop putting shame and blame and realize that they were broken. And the key is it was not your fault.
Mm.
You did not do anything to instigate it. You did not deserve it. You should not take the shame or the blame. Remember, your brain is projecting into the future what you believe about the past. If you cannot break the shame and blame off yourself and the other person, you're going to projecting shame and blame into your future. And I realize it's not easy. It's a very, very, very difficult process. It takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. But I can guarantee you, if you do not break the blame and shame, it will project into your future. Guaranteed.
Wow. Do you mind talking about you 7 years ago when you were going through your last, during this period of depression and even, on the verge of suicide for yourself? How did you elevate yourself out of that position? How did you move through that position? Because I'm sure you didn't consciously know of this structure or have created this structure yet. What did that look like for you, and how did you create a new self-image during that time?
Wow, glad you asked that. So again, I'm a devout Christian. I believe in demonic spirits and darkness. I believe in angelical spirits. As I was, so I believe that a demonic spirit can have an influence over your mind if you leave the door open. So where I look at, I used to be a demon hunter that I've seen a demon behind every bush. I don't think that way anymore. I believe they're there. I know they have power. But here's how I come to understand it is, let me use an analogy of the kids playing in the backyard and they left the water hose run. The dog runs through the mud, comes running into the living room with his muddy feet. And you're like screaming at the kids, turn off that water hose. You clean up the floor. Dog comes back in, runs through the house, muddy feet. You scream at the kids, turn off the water hose. When all you got to do is shut the door. The
Wow.
dog is coming in the house, leaving muddy footprints because the door's open. Well, the demonic spirits are having authority in your life because you left the door open. Now, for me, that door was open 50 years ago, 55 years ago, is that door got opened. And I never shut the door because I didn't know about going back and changing the meaning. So as long as I had the wrong belief, and I used to say, I'm abandoned, I'm rejected. I would tell everybody that. And I lived my life that way. And so I allowed this thought process. Remember, I laid one thought on top of another until it became this huge wall. Now, in them 50 years, I had a lot of successes. I've been on mission trips. I've seen a lot of healing. I've seen a lot of deliverance. But inside of me, there was still what I call a platform. So the demonic spirits only have an authority on a platform of a lie. As long as I'm holding on to the lie, they have the right to be there. I can get anointed in the holy oil. I can pray, go to church every day, all the time. It's not going to change until I change my mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So he's, begging God and praying and all that, asking him to eradicate them or kick them out. It's not going to work because they have a legal right to be there. The legal right is, I have a lie. Only I can hold on to a lie. And here's, God cannot change my mind. Because if God could change my mind, he would have done it a long time ago. It is up to me to transform my mind. I have to choose the truth. I have to choose to change how I think and what I do.
So on that note,
Yes.
Heidi Brooks sent in a question that says, speaking of God's will being sovereign, Ray, how do you remind yourself that your thoughts are powerful if it ultimately has to do with God's will?
Okay, so you got to slow it down. We got them 40 thoughts a minute, then 70,000 thoughts a day. 50% of them thoughts are what I thought yesterday. Is I got to start slowing down. What am I thinking? And consciously, daily. This is hard. I'm a very creative person. So I can have 10 things started in 5 minutes and not have any of them done. You got to slow it down and consciously focus. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? You're not going to squelch your creativity, but you got to become very aware of what are you thinking. The more secure you are in who you are, the more secure you are in slowing down your thinking. So when we don't feel good about ourselves, what do we want to do? We're racing our mind. How can we be lifted up? How can we be recognized? How can we be better than what we are? So we're always trying to elevate ourselves or be elevated. But when I'm very, very secure in who I am, that it doesn't matter what happens around me, now my mind is at peace. I'm in a calmer state of mind. So our inspiration literally comes from the Holy Spirit. So we have inspiration on our own, but the real inspiration comes from the Holy Spirit. Them wow moments, them new ideas that just like, whoa, that was an awesome epiphany. So when we slow down our thinking process, we'll tap into what the Holy Spirit is sharing much quicker. It sounds like counterproductive. I got to slow down to speed up, but it really is. And it's hard. I'm going to tell you, it is very, very difficult. I'm preparing to do a 40-day fast starting January 1st.
Okay.
And it is all about me trying to find myself and who I am in the eyes of God. And as I got to slow me down. So fasting is a very powerful way of kind of slowing everything down. Then just put a plug in here real quick. Before you do an extended fast, please understand how to end the fast before you do a long fast. How you end your fast is way more important than what you do during your fast. If you don't end it properly, you could harm yourself or even could be fatal. If you do too long and you don't end it properly, it can be very devastating.
Yeah, that happened to a friend of mine, actually. So I thank you for saying that, because that's super important.
So if you can contact me, or you simply go to freedomu.com and study fasting. They have a lot of incredible information on fasting, but I strongly encourage anybody to fast in maybe 5 days, 10 days. But if you really want to do the challenge, you can do it longer. There's a lot of great ways of doing it, but definitely check out freedomu.com. Understand fasting before you try it. Please study it. Don't say, wow, that sounds like an awesome idea. Understand what you're doing, please.
Have you done a fast like this before?
I've done several 40-day fasts, yes. They're incredible.
And can you explain, like, what does that mean? Not eating, like, what exactly does 40-day fast, what's it look like?
So I take a gallon of distilled water. I put 1 cup of grade B maple syrup and 1 cup of lemon juice. And that's all I have for 40 days.
Every day you drink that?
Every day I drink about a gallon. And about 15 to 20 days in, I'll start adding about 2 cups of maple syrup in. Again, grade B, because it has more of the things that you want. So that's 1 gallon of water. You dump 1 or 2 cups of maple syrup, 1 cup of lemon juice into a gallon of distilled water. Now, let me just say, if you don't feel called to do this, don't try it. I've done probably 3 of them already. And the one, I did it just because I thought it was cool. My wife and children said they're going to move out until I'm done. I was miserable person. It was not good. I don't think I actually finished that one because I was just not. It wasn't anointed by God. It wasn't, the Holy Spirit did not tell me to do it.
Yeah.
The two that I done that were led by the Spirit were unbelievable.
What was the difference in how you felt, the ones that you feel were led by the Spirit?
Oh, after 20 days, I could have just went forever. I had no desire for food. It was an enlightening experience. It was a incredible experience. The one where I did just because I thought it was cool, it was in the flesh. And wow, I was so miserable. I got absolutely nothing out of it other than my family was upset. That was, they were not happy. I was not happy. So if you don't feel led to do now, a 1 day fast is good. 3 day fast, I think, is what Paul did when he on the Damascus, after the Damascus Road experience, for vision and direction. Again, study what fasting is and how to do it properly. Fasting is really important. The Bible doesn't speak a lot about fasting because it was such a natural thing in that time that it doesn't speak a lot about how to prepare and how to end it because it was just a natural, everybody did it. But study it. It is really amazing. But again, all the fasting, all the prayer, all the study, all the seminary doesn't do you any good if you're not willing to change the meaning.
So important. So that's the underlying foundation of any of these external changes or strategies or programs, to follow this process that, again, like you laid out here, it's a simple process, but it's a difficult process at the same time to continue. Is there a certain amount of time that once you follow this structure for a certain amount of time, you are able to say that you've mastered your emotions? Do you believe that mastering of emotions is a lifelong journey, or is there an end destination, in your opinion?
It's a lifelong journey. If you look at Apostle Paul in the beginning, he said, I'm the chief Pharisee. I was the chief Pharisee of Pharisees. Later in his writing, he goes, I'm a sinner. Later in his writings, he goes, I'm the chief sinner of sinners. So Paul was continually evolving in mastering his emotions. And I don't recommend studying the Shaolin monks at all, but I'm a very curious person, so I study a little bit just to understand. And if you look at them and their mastery of their mind and their body is phenomenal. We can do the same thing they're doing, Christ-centered. But it's definitely a lifelong journey. Even if you look at Elijah, Elijah went up to Mount Carmel, called down fire from heaven. He went into this massive spiritual high, and then he fell into this incredibly emotional low, and to where he ran into the desert and said, Lord, curse the day I'm born. But what was interesting, God did not say, oh, come on, you're my man. I got your back. God had to let him process it on his own until he was done and willing to change his mind. When the angel came to him, the angel didn't say, come on, Elijah, you're his boy. He's got your back. He'll do anything for you. No, the angel had to allow him to process it on his own. So that's one thing, is God gave us the free will. We have to be willing to change the meaning we give to all these events. Wow. When we change the meaning, that's the key. Now I understand there's a new buzz thing going around in the psychology world that trauma, it can't be changed by how you think. That's a it's ingrained into your body. Well, yeah, it's ingrained in your body, but how did it get there? It was by thought alone. Trauma cannot have an effect on you if you don't think it has an effect. If you don't think about it as a bad event, it's not going to affect you. What's the release of the chemical? What releases the chemicals? It's how you think. Your belief of the event is what causes the chemicals to be released. Now, trauma is stored in your body, yes, but it is released by cognitive behavioral therapy, meaning change how you think.
Yeah.
I had a client, did 8.5 years for armed robbery. He came to me on the third visit. I finally said, okay, I let him unload for the first 2 times. The third time I said, it's my turn to talk. I wrote on my whiteboard, my mother was broken and empty. She couldn't give me what she didn't have. The first time he said it, he only said the first part. And I said, no, say the whole thing. And then he said the second part. And I said, no, say it together. When he said, my mother was broken and empty, she couldn't give me what she didn't have, bam, there was a massive, massive transformation. Because when he came to me, he was full of rage. I mean, rage. This boy wanted to hurt people. When that hit him, when that reckoning came to him, was the beginning of a massive, massive transformation. Now, I don't normally see people radically change as quick as he did, but he was hungry. He came to me, he was desperate. He knew that if he didn't change, he was going to hurt somebody. And he wanted change so bad that he was so desperate that when it hit him, he did a massive switch around. Now, he still has to reckon and grapple with the abandonment and the rejection and the incredible abusive things that happened to him, as far as his belief in his ability to become more. So I can say the rage was broken in that moment. That rage was completely broken. Now he's struggling with believing in himself. That's a whole nother thing. And that, again, is a daily process where you got to stop. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Is it true? What's the truth? Is when he comes up to that doubts and that fear, that insecurities. But we can break them major traumas. And I've seen it happen. Now, that rebuilding of your self-confidence and your self-belief in who you are is probably the slower process. But it really is as fast as you make it. Is how, and just going to put a shameless plug in here. Get a coach.
Yeah.
You can do this on your own. It's not impossible. I've done it. I had a few coaches that were really good. Most of this work I did myself. It's a long, hard process. If you're going to hire a coach, let me just recommend this. Make sure that coach is not afraid to offend you. If your coach is afraid to offend you, you're wasting your money. Just going to make it real. If you want a coach to pat you in the back and coddle you and to let you cry,
that's a therapist.
If you want to waste your money.
Yeah.
But ask your coach, are you willing to offend me and tell me how wrong I am?
It's powerful.
That's
so important. I mean, the last year I haven't had an actual coach until the beginning of 2021. And he's a business coach, but he's not just a business coach. He's helped me in my personal life with other things as well. And it's just allowed me to not even 10x. My business has 900x over the course of this year. And sure, other factors are in play, but that guidance and accountability, and more so the support of somebody, because you've given us powerful processes and tools here, and I can't understate that, but it's powerful. You've given us everything that we need. However, what happens after now is the decision of the person listening. And I know one of the most logical next steps would be your book, which is Daddy, Why Don't You Love Me? Which you have an edition for your for a daughter and a son, right? So Can you tell us about the book and where we can find this book? Because I'm going to have links in the description as well, guys. But tell us.
So here's the book to the son and to the daughter. And the book is really about the father's blessing. So again, remember, our brain's doing a research of our whole life to determine what's going to happen in the next moment. And a lot of our beliefs in who we are and our ability to accomplish and be better is based on how do we feel or who do we think we were in the eyes of our fathers or our dads? A father plays such a huge role in a child's life. And if that child grows up with an absent father who just simply wasn't there emotionally, just because he was there physically doesn't mean he was there emotionally. And that is so, so devastating. So many adults are grappling with and never dealt with not having a loving father that was there to hold them and to hold their hand and to hug them and say, I love you, I bless you. So I wrote a book called Daddy, Why Don't You Love Me? A Father's Blessing to a Son and Daughter, Healing the Wounds of the Absent and Abusive Father. The premise of this book is to share a father's blessing, is where I literally start out by saying, I'm sorry for not being there. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for the harsh words that I spoke. I'm sorry for not loving you. And then I go into, I bless the time of your conception. You're not a mistake. You're not an accident. You're loved. You're wanted. First trimester, second, third, all the way through. And like I said earlier, we have seen dramatic healing when people hear that they are loved, wanted, and accepted while they were in the womb. I can tell you countless stories of the incredible transformation when we spoke that truth to that point in their life. And in my book is I go into some really deep things that the father could have done, and I apologize. And then I share that blessing. What is it doing? It is literally transforming your mind, renewing your mind. It's breaking that lie that's deep in your subconscious. Remember, you're going to do a business deal. You could be going to do a $10 million business deal and something goes sideways and it didn't work out. It literally could be traced back to what you felt you were as a child. It all happens at the speed of light. It happens so fast. Now, here's the problem is a lot of the times so we're not allowed to take our home stress to work, but we do. It's just, it's how do you say, it's an undercurrent. You know what a riptide is? Is the current is going out when the waves on top are coming in. The current underneath is going out. And when you get caught in a riptide, it's literally pulling you out into the ocean. You literally cannot swim against a riptide because the undercurrent is much stronger than the currents on the top. So when you're trying to swim against it, you have to swim across it, kind of like on a 45-degree angle. So here you are at work. You're trying to do this deal. You're trying to do and understand what's happening. You may have a fight with your spouse, or you have a struggle with your children, and you're at work. You're trying to think, but in the back of your mind, the struggle with your spouse, your children, your family, your parents is running in the back of your mind. And it kind of pops up and you push it down, and it pops up and you push it down. Well, you can't really deal with it there. So what do? You kind of try to shove it down, you bottle it up, you go home, you're spent. Your emotional energy is gone. You come home to your family, you have nothing to give to them. Unfortunately, we treat our families the way we would never treat anybody else because it's safe. If we treated a stranger the way we treated our family sometimes, we probably wouldn't be standing upright. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We try so hard not to take our home stress to work, but how hard are we trying not to take our work stress home? Mm-hmm. Somewhere our stress has to come out. We have to release it. I call it sex, drugs, and rock and roll and everything in between.
Yeah.
We're going to try all these things to find pleasure. So if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the number one need we have is to be safe. The next need we have is pleasure. Is once we find safety, Now we look for pleasure and acceptance. So when we leave work and we're all stressed out and overwhelmed, what do we want? We feel safe. We have a home, we have a job, we have money, but we're stressed out and we're overwhelmed. And our family may not be giving us that pleasure and that affirmation and that recognition we're looking for. So what do? We go to watch a video, pornography, adulterous affairs, drinking, alcohol, drugs, and the things that look good, go back to work, go do ministry, go help people. But what is the underlying reason why we're out there doing all these so-called good things instead of staying home with our families? We're looking for recognition, affirmation. Because we don't have it. We're empty and broken ourselves. So we're always out volunteering somewhere. We're always out doing ministry. We're always out going back to work. Oh, wow, look at him. Built that huge company. Look how massively successful he is. When there's simply a broken little boy or a broken little girl that's looking for affirmation and recognition.
Wow. That's deep.
And, you know, so it's not that we're always doing bad things. We can be doing good things, all in the name of, I don't feel good. I don't feel worthy of being naked and alone. Whatever you need other than being naked and alone can very quickly become an idol. Let me say that again. Whatever you need other than being naked and alone can very quickly become your idol.
I'm speechless. That's just so insightful because it makes me think of even some things that I do, right? I'm not ashamed to say that I've done good things before in order to be seen in a certain light because I thought that thing would bring me a certain feeling. And it does, especially in the short term. You feel good, but then it leaves and you have to do it again in order to get that same. It's almost as if you're feeding on something in order to get that same feeling. It is an addiction. Yeah.
Doing good can be an addiction to affirmation.
And is that a bad thing to be addicted to doing good?
It's why are you addicted to doing good? Is it for the affirmation and recognition? Or is it because you just passionately love doing it?
Yeah.
If you're doing it not to get anything, it's a good thing. If you're doing it for recognition or affirmation, it's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing for who? For you?
Yes. Because if you're doing it if you're doing a good thing for the wrong reason, it's not a good thing for you. So if you're not okay being naked and alone before God, then whatever you need is an addiction.
Wow. Yeah.
So
well said.
Doing good things is not bad. Why are you doing good things? What is your motive? What is your reason?
Back to those questions.
Why? Stop. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Stop. What am I doing? Why am I doing that?
Do you question everything, Ray?
You have to. You have to. If you don't question it, you can very, very quickly develop a habit. Habits are second nature. They're auto responses. Habits you ever catch yourself doing something like, I can't believe I did that again. Why do I keep doing that? It's a habit. If you do not tear it down, break it down to the root. Stop. What am I thinking? Stop. Why am I doing that habit? Where did it come from? Is it true? What's the truth? If you don't get down to the root of that habit, it's going to constantly keep coming back. It's the weed whacker again. Cut the dandelion off at the ground level. Boom. Next week, it's back. Cut all but this much of the root out. 2 weeks later, it comes back. So we medicate and we pray and we go to revival. You ever go to a revival meeting? First day you're at the revival meeting, it's like, oh, this is good. Second day, it's like, whoa, this is awesome. Third day, it's like, oh, Jesus, I'll die for you. Anything you want. Oh, come Friday, people are like, whoa, get away from me. Lightning's about to hit you, boy. What happened? So this is really critical. An emotional low will pull you out of a spiritual high. A spiritual high can never pull you out of an emotional low.
Mm.
Very, very important to understand this. So if I can dive a little deeper here,
Sure.
if you go back to Genesis, Genesis chapter 2, at the very end says God created man and woman. They were naked and not ashamed. So God just right there described a very, very powerful emotion. They were not ashamed. Go to Genesis chapter 3. God says, Adam, where are you? Adam responds, I heard you and I was afraid. Very, very powerful emotion. Genesis chapter 2, Adam and Eve are not driven by emotions. They had emotions, not driven by them. They were not ashamed, naked. Chapter 3. Now they have emotions. They're driven by emotions. We were not designed to be emotionally driven people. Our emotions will keep us out of the spiritual. So when you feel an overwhelming emotion, it will yank you out of a spiritual high.
Mm.
Remember, you went to the revival meeting. First day is like, this is good. Second day is like, whoa. Third day is like, oh my gosh, I could die here. What happened? It's Elijah syndrome. Elijah went up Mount Carmel. He taunted the prophets of Baal, maybe for a day. I don't know how long he taunted them. But as he was taunting them, he started getting into a spiritual high, and his emotions went away. His spirit rose up, rose up, rose up, rose up. And he calls down fire from heaven, eliminates 600 prophets of Baal. Now, from the time the messenger went from Mount Carmel to Jezebel and back, could have been, I don't know, 3 to 5 days, not sure. Just say 3 days. Now, Elijah's kind of walking around. He's not really doing anything. He was in his massive spiritual high, and he's not doing it. All of a sudden, he comes down to kind of a normal and to an emotional low. Because when you do a very significant feat, it's not unusual to have kind of feel deflated. Because not what do I do? I was just this massive. Now what? So he's kind of like, all of a sudden he gets his text message from Jezebel, I'm going to kill you. He throws down his phone, runs into the desert, says, Lord, kill me. Curse the day I'm born. He goes, I am alone. Nobody's with me. Remember, before he went to Mount Carmel, there was 70 prophets that were with him. But what does he do? He reverted back to his core values and core beliefs.
Mm.
You can't go back to where you've never been. Elijah said, I am alone. Nobody is with me. That was his core. Somewhere in his core, he believed that he was alone and nobody was with him. So if we are not constantly looking at the core of who we are and correcting the meaning, we're going to find ourselves going back there in our most traumatic moments.
Wow.
Now, we go into a spiritual high. There's no significant vegetation on the mountaintop. You can't live up there. You can't live on the spiritual highs. But you will not fall as far into the emotional lows when you learn to deal with your emotional lows so that you don't fall down there anymore. Because what happens, everybody's trying to break that glass ceiling. Everybody's trying to do that one better.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen? Chris Voss says, we will fall to our highest level of preparedness. Elijah fell to his highest level of preparedness. As a human, we have a level of preparedness. What would happen if we worked on raising our floor? Instead of being so consumed with breaking the glass ceiling, what would happen if we raised our floor?
You're raising your level of preparedness.
Well, you got it.
Damn.
When you fall, not if, when. You're going to fall. You're going to fall. If you're raising your level of preparedness, if you're raising your floor by dealing with your past, when you fall, you will not fall near as far.
Wow.
And you're going to bounce back up much, much quicker. So you
What
look
a way to tie this all together.
So you look at Elvis Presley, Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, you name it, the celebrities. You could go on and on and on with celebrities who had the money, had the fans. Seemingly, there's like, who could want more?
Mm-hmm.
And what happened to all of them? They have a very common story.
Mm-hmm.
They ended in disaster.
Yeah.
Why? They never dealt with their past. It really comes down to they never raised their floor. They never dealt with their junk. Why do people do drugs? Why do people do excessive drinking? Why do sexual promiscuity, pornography? Why do people do all them things that we know we shouldn't be doing? Overeating, overworking. Why are we so driven? Recognition. Why do we want more recognition? It's because we're empty. We're empty and we're broken and empty. We're afraid to be naked and alone before God. Whatever you need other than being naked alone before God is an idol. Now, please keep your clothing on, please. But when you're with God and you're not enough naked and alone, whatever you desire so much is stopping you from that desired connection with God.
Yes.
This is hard. I'm not saying this is easy. This has been a journey. So 7 years ago, I was 5 minutes away from suicide. It took me about a year to really catch my equilibrium. Let me see here. Here's a chart. I don't know if you guys see this. This is where I was at my lowest point right here. And it took me about a year before I really caught on and then I started on this massive growth here, coming up through here. So it is a journey. This is definitely a journey. But guys, if you don't start somewhere, you're going to be where you are next year. And rather than making all the New Year's resolutions, or I'm going to try to make 10% or 20% more, I'm going to try to go to the gym, start just looking at your past. What has been stopping you in the past? When you hit the wall, when you're angry, why are you angry? Why are you depressed? Why are you upset? Stop. What am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Is it true? What's the truth? Stop making the resolutions and start digging. This is no fun. Oh man, this is hard. This is absolutely no fun at all. But I tell you what, it sure is no fun climbing that mountain to fall off of it.
Yeah.
Because you're going to fall. But the more that you raise your floor, the only raise your floor is to get down on the floor and work on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to get down on and work on it and figure out why it's where it is. Why am I here? Why, when that person says that, does that make me feel this? Oh, that's because of this. Oh, well, why am I feeling that when they say that? Well, it's because of this. And you just keep digging back, digging back, and digging back. If you don't deal with it, I don't care what your IQ level is. I don't care how many degrees you have, how much money you're making a year. When you fall, you're going to fall in a dramatic way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just wow. And I know we could go into this deeper and deeper. And you're a masterful storyteller. I just want to commend you for that ability to tell incredible stories and really tie in those stories to the principles you just talked about, because you shared your process, you shared the concept of raising the floor, just a lot to think about here and a lot to introspect. And really the biggest thing, guys, is just to start putting this into use now. Again, I'm going to have links to Ray's book and website and everything else in the description, so you can go and follow Ray to continue this journey. But Ray, I just want to thank you for sharing the stories and the insights and the processes that you've created from your own experience and from that of others that you've worked with. So thank you for sharing that. And it's been a pleasure having you on the show, my friend.
My number one goal is I want to be for the world what the world was not for me when I needed them the most. I never want anybody to be the same because they met me.
I love that. Thank you very much, Ray. And we'll have to have you back on in the future.
I look forward to that. If your listeners have questions and you want to do another podcast in the future to answer their questions, I would love that.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, my friend. You just got took to church. Let me tell you guys, I'm not someone who goes to church. I'm not someone who, speaks of God frequently. But I think it's really important to say for anyone who's listened. I mean, if you got to this point, obviously you took something away. But I think the biggest thing here is, even if you're not a devout Christian like Ray, think of God as whatever it is that brings you that comfort, whatever you believe source to be, whatever you believe this infinite intelligence is, whatever you believe the universe is. It's all synonymous, because what Ray shared with you here is a way for you to raise your own floor, so that when you fall, because the reality is we're always going to have hard times, we're always going to have shortcomings, we're going to fall. You're going to fall at some point. You'll always fall to your highest level of preparedness. So get preparing. Use this 5-step process, the 5 questions that Ray shared. Again, is when you have this thought, when you're feeling stuck, number 1, stop. Number 2, ask, what is this thought? Number 3, ask, why am I thinking this? Number 4, is it true? And number 5, what's the truth? Ask yourself that over and over. It's a lifelong journey, and it's something that you continue to improve on. But as you improve, you raise the floor. Just an overall insightful conversation with Ray Hurst. Again, links are in the description to grab a copy of his book, as well as to follow him and view everything he's up to with coaching and all that he does. You got to check out his site because it's pretty incredible. And again, please share this show with one person if you took away any insights, value. The conversation going on in the comments for this one's absolutely incredible. So thank you guys for watching and asking your incredible questions and being here. And as always, until we talk again next time, continue to be better. And I hope you guys have an incredible new year. I'll talk to you soon.